the Inspire Alex podcast.
Let's get to it. But actually, I wanted to do this, bro, because I remember it was like summer last year where you showed me a video of Imran Khan being arrested in the streets, bro, surrounded by like 50 police officers, bro.
Yeah.
And then you kind of explained to me some basic things about the politics in Pakistan. But just to start, can you tell me why Imran Khan was arrested and who is Imran Khan?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll start it off by telling you who Imran Khan is. He's basically a cricketer turned politician, and he started his political journey in late 1990s, and he took him some while to get into the political infrastructure. Basically, when he started his political career, he was just a one-man show. Even today, he's just a one-man show because without him, his party means nothing. Most of the people that support Imran Khan is just for Imran Khan and not the party manifesto. They don't even know what the party manifesto is. So, and recently, most of the people that have come up in support for him is basically, I would like to say that it's anti-establishment, but it's not anti-establishment. It's just that they want to build some support around the persona that Imran Khan really is. And that persona is, he's a handsome guy, tall, good looking, knows how to speak English, doesn't have to have a, what we call a perchi in his hand to speak to international leaders. So that should really tell you about what the Pakistani political structure looks like and what we aspire to be like. I mean, if that's something that would get Imran Khan to be elected to the prime ministership, so that's really not a good standard. And to talk about why he got arrested, well, yeah, he just started, having a bit more anti-establishment approach. He was he, the reason why he got anti-establishment approach was because there was this one particular interview that I remember, and a lot of people actually quote that interview when they're talking about Imran Khan, and where he was asked a question whether a CIA could have bases in Pakistan to operate in Afghanistan, and he said absolutely not. And that's something that obviously the Pakistani establishment, when we talk about the establishment, we're basically talking about the army. So they didn't like, because they're actually really dependent on the CIA and the funding that they get from the states. So they didn't like it, and they wanted somebody who wasn't as abrupt, who was a bit more diplomatic, and they wanted him out of power. So it all started from that. Then it turned into a vote of no confidence within the political structure or the National Assembly. Then he got ousted, and he's in jail these days. Yeah.
Yeah, he was arrested, and recently he was sentenced. I saw, but we can get into that. But just my question: he was prime minister, right?
Yeah.
Was he there a long time?
He was there for like 3.5 years. Yeah,
Okay.
but before that, he had a government in KP. He wasn't leading the government. He wasn't the chief minister of KP, but he had some power in KP. This when I say this, I'm talking about the time from 2013 2018,
Uh-huh.
and then he got elected in 18 and ousted in 2020.
So even before he was prime minister, he already had some popular power.
Yeah, definitely. He started building his political report around 2013, 12, 13. And basically, just because people were sick and tired of the people that were just, it was basically a musical chair. We would shift from one party to the other, and then have the other party come back again.
Was Pakistan always a democracy?
Pakistan's never been a democracy. So this is a really interesting idea that Pakistan is a democracy. I don't think so. Because from the beginning, it all started in 1953. We had governor generals before that. Governor generals basically meant that they had all power to themselves. They could basically just say that the national government should be stripped of all power, and he could do that. Essentially, that he was the king of the country. So yeah, and from 53 onwards, we had dictatorship in many different sort of shapes and forms, and yeah, it's been like that ever since. And even if we had a democratic political party on top, it was somehow supported by the army.
Mm.
So it was just a pseudo reflection of democracy.
And that's one thing you talked to me about is the army. And you were mentioning what's the establishment. You talk about the army.
Yeah.
You know, for me and people like me in the West, when we think of the army, we just think of this thing that, you know, is there used by the state to protect the country. But it seems like here it's really a institution.
Yes, but if you could elaborate more on what you mean by an
Like,
institution.
oh, well, maybe you can elaborate more because it feels like the army is almost a political party where they pull strings and where the generals have power.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's more than just this thing that, for example, in France we have our army, but they don't have any power. They just listen to orders, right?
Yeah. But when you were asking this question, for some reason I thought you were saying apolitical, and I was like, no, that's not what the army is. But yes, it's a political party. Essentially, it's a political entity. It shouldn't have been, but yes, it goes back to the history of Pakistan, which is that we as a nation have been so securitized that initially, when Pakistan, right after Pakistan's independence, the America or the states offered two options. It gave one option to the Indians, gave one options to the Pakistanis. What do you want? And we basically asked for $5 billion for the to build our army. So that just goes to show. I mean, it's not to say that we shouldn't have done that, because we had threats from our borders. We had conflicts with Iran. We had conflicts with Afghanistan. And when I say conflicts, they're border disputes. And we had a persistent border, and it goes on till today with India. So we had to securitize ourselves. That's not to say that that was a bad decision. It's given us a lot of advantage. In, for example, if a country doesn't have the ability to protect itself, you can never protect your national interests. But then again, I think we could have, you know, handled the situation a bit better. Yeah.
So yeah, so the fact that at the creation of Pakistan, this is the choice they made. It kind of sent them in a certain path of
Yeah.
being military focused and stuff like that.
Yeah. It was definitely that. Whereas when India asked for the same thing, India didn't ask for the same thing. Actually, India asked for some funding to develop its educational infrastructure. So that really tells you about the idea that both nations had. And our idea, yeah, it's complicated because a lot of things come into play. For example, even when we say that the army or the establishment had a lot of power, their power actually also at some points in time in history banked on religious ideas. And when I say this, I'm talking about the Zia era, which basically sort of forced religious ideas not only within the army structure but also within the political structure of Pakistan.
Hmm. Mhm. And I mean, most people know Pakistan is a very Muslim country, right?
Hmm.
And even kind of the creation of Pakistan, it was the divide between
Yeah.
Hindus and the Muslims. Kind of, I don't know the vague history of it, but you know, there was some people that were treated kind of badly. And you mentioned also you had some border disputes. Do, I know you bordered China as well. You
Yeah.
have border disputes with China.
It's interesting because we did have some border disputes with China, but when we were negotiating, we sort of gave away the border that we wanted, that we shared with China. We just gave it away to the Chinese because we didn't want to have too many conflicts
Hmm.
all around us. So yeah, and China was a forced to back then. It wasn't forced to contend with, but it certainly was something that we could see becoming our regional partner. So yeah.
And now it seems that you guys are kind of partners when you look at even
Y-
Pakistan and India. Whatever India
yeah.
is more aligning with the West, it seems Pakistan seems to be more aligning with China.
It is, but then again, it's international politics, and I don't think that you could ever find a friend in international politics. It's just interest, and also there's so many arguments to be made about whether what China is bringing into Pakistan is that what we really want. Because there's a case in point in Hambantota port. China basically took that over. Now we've leased Gwadar port, which is basically our entry point into the Arabian Sea. We've leased that off to China. So
And so the first sport you mentioned,
yeah.
I believe it's because like you had this infrastructure deal or something, and
Yeah, so China is bringing in a lot of money into Pakistan, and we don't have the money to support it. Then we have to sort of give some assets to the other country just for some time being, and so that's sort of deal that we've struck.
mhm. Yeah, so you're wary of just international.
Yeah. I mean, China is basically I mean, it would be a sweeping statement to make, but there's definitely arguments to be made about whether China is the new East India Company. That's how the British infiltrated the subcontinent.
How
And
so?
so basically, you just try to build businesses, then you, give out loans, then you build political power.
So
You have the
is that what you mentioned, the East India Company? I don't know about this company.
so East India Company is something that came into the subcontinent initially just to build businesses within this is a very vague sort of overview that I'm going to give you, because yeah, so it started with that, then it built some mercenary forces, then it had some influence. They used that influence to get support of the princely nawabs, and then they had political influence, and then they sort of capitalized on that to build the British Empire within the subcontinent. So they had the administrative control over the continent.
Mhm.
So that's how you do it. You basically just decapacitate the other person and come out on top.
Yeah, divide and rule.
Divide and rule. Yeah, but that's what a lot of people say that basically led to the division of the subcontinent as well, because yeah, we used to live, the Hindus and the Muslims, they were pretty happy living with each other, and there's a history that dates back thousands of years. So I don't think that the conflict was that Hindus and Muslims couldn't live together. Obviously there were some other motivations behind it.
It certainly is something that is, understandable to think, okay, well, thousands of years you guys are living good together, and all of a sudden there's war and a lot of hate going on.
Yeah.
So, and some people can easily talk to other people and make people fight against each other for their interests.
I mean, just look at the European Union right now. They have a history that they have a history that's totally opposite to what we had. They have a history of conflict and war and basically ravaging each other's countries. And now they're in a union. So it's just political mongering. I think that's what it boils down to.
Mm. Yeah, and China is smart, and they're definitely taking a page out of the playbook of England and also out of America's playbook.
Of course. I mean, when the idea comes that you're a Muslim or you're a Hindu and you build a nation state around that. For example, we're good friends with China these days, but we never talk about the Uyghur situation in China. The Pakistani president, the Imran Khan, the he was asked about a question about the Uyghurs and what he had to say about that, and he was like, "I don't know about it." So sometimes ignorance is a bliss, and this was definitely a time where he could plead ignorance.
Mm-mm. Yeah. So yeah, going back to this Imran Khan situation. So he was arrested out of nowhere. I don't even know why he was arrested, but so it's the army, which we talked about as this institution that arrests him.
Yeah,
And then protests break out, right?
yeah.
How long did those protests last and what kind of happened there?
I mean, Imran Khan didn't just get arrested. I mean, they tried to arrest him for quite some time, and the situation it panned out for a month or so. But
Did they say why they arrested him when they did?
yeah, so for 9th May, which is basically when the protesters, the Imran Khan supporters, they went out and they started, because they were really angry, they started going into the government infrastructures or the buildings, and they started just thrashing things around. I'll give you one example. For example, uh, there's the corps commander of Lahore. He lives in the house of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Jinnah house. Jinnah is basically the guy, the founder of Pakistan. So he lives in Jinnah house, and it's very secure. I mean, the army checkposts around that and stuff like that. So the protesters, they barged into that and they sort of putting things on fire and stuff like that. So essentially, it started with that, and now they've got 200 cases on Imran Khan,
And then so basically they arrested him for what? Inciting.
inciting violence.
Incite.
Yeah,
It sounds a lot like what happened in the U.S. with January 6th.
yeah,
And
with
then
Donald Trump.
and they try to put it on Donald Trump.
It's definitely the same thing, man. It's definitely the same thing. Yeah, it's very very interesting how the world has shifted towards this right wing populism. So I don't know how we'll manage our way about it, but if Trump comes back, for some reason, I think the international situation would just ease out a bit, because you need leaders that are just straightforward. They're not very diplomatic in their ways. You need to be assertive, and you need to say that this is what you're doing, this is wrong, you don't do that. If you do, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, when we talk about international relations, it's all about, national interests.
Yeah,
And if people were more honest, by people I mean countries and leaders were more honest that they're doing things based on national interests, things would work out more. Like America, they always do things, even look at Ukraine, they're like, oh, we're helping
yeah,
democracy.
yeah,
But no, it's like they're advancing. If they're honest about that, which Donald Trump usually is,
yeah,
it does help relations because at least I can negotiate with you. I know where you want to go,
yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So, okay, so Imran Khan gets arrested and he's been in prison. And now, last week, there was the new elections, right?
Yeah,
For his prime minister spot. And tell me if I'm wrong, just before the election happens, he was sentenced.
yeah.
So, which means he's going to jail. Whatever.
No, he's already in jail.
Okay, but
Yeah,
so now he's gonna do time for sure.
yeah, not for
And
sure. This is the thing about
not for
Pakistani
sure.
politics, not
Yeah,
for
because
sure.
then he ends up, or his party ends up winning the election.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say his party ends up winning the election, because right now he has absolutely no political party. So the party that he had is no longer in being. They had this political symbol, that a bat. They were stripped away from that. They couldn't compete the national elections as a party. So the very fact that Imran Khan actually won these elections is a testament to sort of the public anger that currently resides within the people. So, and most of it is just, they just don't want the same people coming into power. But the second thing is, they don't want the establishment to be controlling all of the politics in Pakistan. So when he won the elections, he was in jail. He had no political party. He had no political symbol. So which means that all of the voters, they didn't know who to vote for. So they built the PTI, or Imran Khan's party. They built an infrastructure to basically assist all their voters in who to vote for, because obviously you don't know when you're voting. You just see the symbol that this guy is running from this party.
Uh,
I'm just going to vote for this
yeah, I
guy.
heard because in Pakistan they have political parties
Yeah,
and they have symbols for
yeah,
each political parties,
yeah.
and that's how people
Yes,
kind of know who to
yes,
vote for. And then what you're saying is that the party that everyone knew him for was that symbol is no longer there.
yeah.
So now when they had the elections, was there a new symbol?
No, there was no symbol. So everybody who was supported by PTI or Imran Khan, they had their own. They had been given their own symbols by the election commission. So there was nobody knew what their symbols were, and how people actually voted was, they just sent a text to s- some PTI supported, I don't know, network maybe, or some infrastructure around it. For example, there was a number, I can't exactly remember what the number was, maybe 4300. You send a text to them, you send them your CNIC, they tell you where your vote is and who the candidate is that is supported by Pakistan Tehreek Insaf. So then they knew that this is how you vote. They had some infrastructure on Facebook as well. So basically, people who were a bit tech savvy, they could just go onto Facebook, send a message to PTI's Facebook page with this CNIC, and they would tell them who to vote for.
And if the army is kind of controlling, now they have Imran Khan in prison and they're
Yeah,
kind of controlling the country, why wouldn't they just control the election?
That's a very interesting question because I mean, I would go one step further and I would say that why even have an election? Why just not take over the country? Because it just saves you a lot more political clout, I would say, in some ways, because there was a time that when the army was really respected and there were times when even there was a public opinion and public actually wanted the army to take over. Just 5 to 7 years back, there were there were news coverages, not news coverages, but on different channels, there were people debating why the army isn't taking over. They should take over. This is their chance. Not their chance, but they need to do this. This is their responsibility as protectors of the state. So now they've lost all of that
And why
political
were
leverage.
people saying what was going on for them to say the army needs to take over?
I mean, it's just the political instability. It just boils down to that. It's either that or the security. It's mostly the political situation that really demands some sort of action by the army.
So I know you said you don't really think Pakistan is a democracy,
Yeah.
but do you think with everything going on, because even now they do have elections, so that is a sign of democracy. Do you think Pakistan, what's left of Pakistan's democracy, is at stake?
Uh, yes, it is at stake. I mean, not that there's much left of it, but when you say that there are elections in Russia as well. But
Mm, mm,
Putin's been
mm.
there a long time, and we just saw in the news that Navalny was just assassin. I don't know if assassinated, but he just died in the
Yeah.
prison. So is it a democracy? You never know. But just because you have elections, Russia's had elections for the longest while, but there's only one party or two parties that were competing. So I don't know if you can call this democracy, but yes, they do give out this facade that the people have some sort of power. And Pakistan's democracy, I think this this point in time is very crucial for Pakistani democracy because army, I don't want to say army, but yeah, I've said it too many times to, just take back those words. But yes, the establishment has lost whatever respect it had or whatever semblance of integrity it had for itself. And this is the time when you push back. I think this, if all the political parties, they just unite in some ways, obviously this is a utopian idea when it comes to Pakistan, but if they just see that maybe this might be the time that they could actually get the establishment out of politics, then I think there is something to be said whether we could be a democracy again.
Yeah. And one thing that's weird, because look, you mentioned Russia, but when they do have elections
Yeah.
in brackets, but one guy always wins, right? But here in this case, it seems like the party that's not the establishment won,
Yeah.
which is not something you would expect, right?
Yeah.
If that's something, you're running elections, these countries that, have elections as a facade, it's still controlled. So it's the least thing that I would expect for the anti-establishment party to win.
So yeah, this is interesting. Why? Because uh, Imran Khan wasn't a very anti-establishment person. The only party that has consistently taken a position that was anti-establishment was Pakistan's People's Party. And even there's arguments to be made whether they collaborated with the establishment to come into power, and yes, they did. But when Imran Khan initially came into power, that was 2018, he was supported by the army, and he supported the army. He's made thousands of statements saying that, this general, he's a very apolitical guy, he doesn't want to get involved in this. And then you see the very same Imran Khan, when he was being ousted, say that this general, we need to get rid of him. So I mean,
Specifically this guy.
yeah.
Uh,
So all of the parties, they've, at some point in time in history, they've been supported by the establishment, and basically that's how they formed themselves as political entities within Pakistan. Whether you take Noon League, which is the PMLN, or you take the People's Party, they have a history of collaboration. Not, yeah, they do have a history of collaboration. It starts with Zulfi Bhutto. and then Benazir, and then now we have Bilawal.
Why do you think he made a turn and kind of went this path of anti-establishment? Like, was that a mistake?
I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's a principled position that needs to be taken within Pakistan. But I don't think he did it for principles, for his own principles. But
Mm,
it's yeah, I'll be making a judgment, but I sincerely believe that it's more that he wants to be in power. He's a very egoistic man, and a lot of people might not agree with me on this. But at the same time, there are people on the other end of this debate as well who would. But I think he's a very egoistic man, and even now there are reports of him, having some sort of a deal between the army or the establishment and him, that they give him the seats back, then he comes into power. And yesterday he just made a statement that there would be no political revenge if he comes back to power. So this is just signaling that if you support me in this now, I wouldn't do shit. So he just, can I say shit and stuff like
yeah,
that? Yes. So uh, yeah, it's not a principled stance that he's taken, and his supporters don't have a principled stance either. As soon as they see him coming back to power, they lose all of this anti-establishment bullshit that they're trying to you know support these days. They just want Khan in power because he's handsome, he's tall, he
mm.
knows how to speak
That's
English.
pretty charismatic.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then and you mentioned like Imran Khan, he was sentenced, but it's not sure he's gonna stay in prison.
Yeah, it's definitely not sure. Maybe even a couple of weeks and he's out. I'm exaggerating
Yeah, but a
obviously
lot of
right now.
things can unfold
Yeah,
in
a
these
lot of
coming
things
weeks.
can unfold. And they're unfolding as we speak.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because
Yeah.
things are happening right now. The
Yeah.
election just happened. I was looking into like some videos where they're talking about the election and everything that's going on, and even they're saying that like news anchors in the establishment at one point they weren't even allowed to say Imran Khan. They
Yeah.
were
There
not
was
allowed.
total blackout of Imran Khan. You couldn't speak of him. He was basically Voldemort, the man who should not be.
Uh,
What's how does it
yeah, like
exactly
the
go?
man who shall not be named.
The man who shall not be named. So he was basically Voldemort of Pakistani politics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and because he took this anti-establishment turn.
Yeah, and he was popular with it.
It's interesting, when we look at these cases of these anti-establishment people. So Imran Khan, also Donald Trump is also
Yeah,
seen as
yeah,
anti-establishment. You have Andrew Tate,
yeah,
who's seen as anti-establishment, and all these people are kind of in different ways got hit with basically prison
yeah.
and cases. So even if whatever, you can have your opinions on Imran Khan or whatever, but the idea is the same. Where they became kind of anti-establishment,
Yeah,
got hit with some cases, and got put in jail.
yeah,
In America, it's kind of harder to do that, but they're using the legal system, whatever. You just asked them to pay like 400 million, Donald Trump.
yeah.
But it's interesting to look at kind of this establishment, no matter which country it is, it's still kind of using the same techniques, you know?
Of course, man. It's there are different establishments in different countries. In Pakistan, it might be the army. In other countries, for example, if you talk about the states, there's the establishment is people who have influence, people who control the media. I mean, it's a cliche to say this, but people who have influence, they become the establishment. Whether you want to say it's the military-industrial complex in the states or anything else. So yeah, and I don't know. Maybe we're seeing a new establishment coming into power with this wave, with this new wave. I don't know.
Mm. So, and this new wave is kind of this, because look, you said that Imran Khan took this stance, but it wasn't really out of morals. It was more out of he knew he could get backing from the people.
Yeah,
And so maybe, yeah, so that's a new wave of being for the people, but just for getting power, and it's just gonna be the new establishment again.
yeah. It's gonna be the new establishment again. I mean, he when he's so popular with this anti-establishment approach, and he comes back into power and he says that now there's a new sort of establishment because now they're very cooperative and collaborative. He's gonna lose all of this narrative and this popularity that he's recently just grown, and it's just gonna give the establishment some breathing room for them. Maybe rethink how they need to infiltrate again, and this is exactly what they need. So they're gonna recoup, bide their time, and come back again. It's not gonna change if Imran Khan does this.
And so you mentioned the media,
Yeah.
and if I'm not wrong, you have history in journalism, right?
Y- yeah, I'd say I'm a pseudo journalist. I've been a pseudo journalist for some time.
What is this pseudo journalism?
I mean, it's not. I wasn't a journalist per se, but I was a sub-editor for this organization back in Pakistan, and I conducted some interviews. Yeah,
But how is the like media in Pakistan or journalism in Pakistan?
it's very lucrative for one thing.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, everybody they do make lots of money, but of course there's an effort that they put into that, so well deserving. And the guy that I used to work with, I think he might be one of the most well established and actually intelligent journalists in Pakistan. But then again, when we talk about the media in Pakistan, it's very polarized. So you've got one side supporting certain political parties, and you've got the other side basically just supporting the Khan. And boils down to, even you could even argue that these guys, they're basically workers of Pakistan Tehreek Insaf. This is the extent that they go to out of their way to support Imran Khan. So it's certainly very polarized, and yeah.
Yeah, I saw something where it was this journalist who actually has the same name, Imran Khan,
Mm.
and he was doing like journalism on Imran Khan, but mostly on like YouTube and stuff like that. He has like millions of subscribers. And you know this guy, Imran Khan, journalist?
Oh yeah.
And
I do.
then do you know like what happened to him? Something like he was
Yeah, he also got arrested.
yeah, and he disappeared or
Yeah, he
something.
disappeared. He recently just came back. He's had a lot of followers. He's making tons of money just off of YouTube. But yes, he was a very established journalist back in the days. Even now, he is a good journalist, but I don't think he criticizes the Imran Khan as he criticized the other parties. When
Mhm.
Imran was in power, he was the sort of journalist that would go up to him and ask him, "What are you doing with Punjab?" Because Punjab was a really contentious sort of re- province. The administrator that Imran Khan basically had over there wasn't very competent. He was basically just a saving face over there, because a lot of people were competing for the same position. So he didn't want to, just side with one person, give him the seat, because that would mean a lot of backlash from the others. So Imran Khan just saved his face by putting this guy in power. He was absolutely dumb fuck. He didn't know what to do. So yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that Khan actually quotes that why he made him the chief minister was even that his village didn't have electricity. What do you mean his village didn't have electricity? He's the administrator. He needs to be the sort of person that could actually do something for the people. He needs to make sure that the village that he's found all of the support from is catered for by the province. So I don't know, man. It's complicated, but Imran Khan, yeah, he just recently came back. Now we're talking about the journalist. He just recently came back. He has. I don't think he's very balanced in his approach as he was in the previous days. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he's aware that now there are some consequences to certain journalism, but it is very important to have good journalism.
Yeah, it's very important, and I'm not saying that he's a bad journalist. He's a very established journalist in Pakistan, but the idea behind being a journalist is that you criticize both sides. You don't just take a party position and become essentially a worker for the party. That's the one thing that I'm criticizing. And also, there are a lot of journalists who just put out this narrative that they support Imran Khan just because they get a lot of clout from it. So
Mm.
Imran Khan, just how Andrew Tate basically became a phenomena, that you have Tate over over at your podcast and you'd make money. You'd get a lot of views. So if you talk about Imran Khan and you support him, you'll get a lot of views. And for some reason, supporting Imran Khan, and I myself, I think I'm a supporter of the party, but for some reason, supporting Imran Khan has also become something that the intellectual people of Pakistan do, whereas supporting Noon League is something that's associated with, you having a low intellect, and you're not from an inferior background, and patwari, that's what we say in slang in Pakistan. So I think, yeah, there's layers to this polarization that exists within the Pakistani political structure, and this basically translates within the society as
Yeah.
well.
And I think you don't only see that in Pakistan, you kind of see that everywhere where journalists are taking a side.
Yeah,
Even they say, oh, we're just asking questions, but we clearly see the questions that
yeah,
you're asking
yeah.
and we can dissect it and know I can tell you all your beliefs based on your questions.
Of course, of course.
And it's a shame to see that you know, it's harder to find good journalists nowadays, like you see on TV or on press conferences, these journalists that are just terrible, man. Like it hurts. Like now no one listens to it now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of the current state of journalism is very bad, but there's a turn and a change that's happening. Now people are moving online and now you have a lot more independent
Yeah, but I,
journalists.
I think that's a phenomena that needs to be supported in many ways. Journalists, they're losing a lot of their popularity. People are shifting towards different modes of consuming information, and the information that you get apart from the local TV channels is something that you can never get out of a local channel, because
Mm,
obviously they are being controlled by some people. You as a person are not being controlled by, so any position that you take online is something that you can own for yourself. You don't need somebody to legislate that for you, or nobody can legislate that for you, or maybe even ask you to not do that, unless of course you're supported by big groups. Then they're going to be like, bro, you need to chill out. But yeah, this is definitely something that needs to be commended, and for sure that gave me a platform to come over here and talk to you about Pakistani politics. So yeah.
yeah, it's definitely evolving. And it goes to with this expression we talked about Andrew Tate of being stuck in the matrix.
Yeah.
But it's, to kind of break that down, it's a little bit that you're being controlled in some way. And I feel
Of
like
course.
if you're at a news station and if you were gonna say a certain thing, you might lose your job,
Yeah.
then you're probably not gonna say that certain thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a form of control. While if you have your own, let's say, following on now X, the old Twitter,
Yeah,
it's not your independent, maybe it's not your job.
yeah.
You can say what you want, and ask questions you want and have self-reporting, and it's good.
100% I agree, man. We need this stuff. We need this stuff, especially in countries that have state controlled media. We
Yeah.
definitely need that.
Yeah, and not only that, it's like I feel like it's giving a platform to also these journalists that want to be journalists
Yeah.
to allow. And going back to what we were saying about how these kind of anti-establishment people have all this public support, well, I feel like these independent journalists also have all this public support.
Mm.
And looking at, for example, Tucker Carlson,
Yeah.
he got fired,
Yeah.
made this move. Now he's independent, has his own network, and has a lot of public support. Like he's getting a lot of views, getting a lot of interviews. People are more willing to speak to him.
Yeah, no, definitely. But Tucker Carlson is somebody who made his career in actually journalism. So I mean, he used that he as a leverage to basically have his own channel on YouTube. But there's certainly guys out there that
As in, he
basically,
already had a name.
yeah, he
Yeah.
already had a name. But there's certainly guys out there who basically made their careers off of YouTube or maybe
Mm,
other social media
mm,
platforms. And yes, they're very independent. They talk about what they want to talk about, and of course, the when we're talking about consuming things online, you have the option of consuming it or not, right? So you make a conscious effort to search for things that you want to basically be searching for. You don't just have a 24-hour news stream that you're constantly watching and you're consuming all of that BS that you don't want to consume. and you're just looking for things that you're more interested in rather than just knowing things about what's happening. So I mean, it's a good transformation that we're currently having.
Do you think the fact that Tucker Carlson was on mainstream news before
Yeah.
uh allowed him to have this big name that he has now, and as in like a person that goes up on YouTube and grows by being an individual
Yeah.
cannot yet achieve that certain level that he has?
uh Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of support that he actually had. Not support, but y- yes, that was an aspect that basically contributed to his popularity on YouTube. But that's not to say that he couldn't have been the sort of person that he is, or the journalist that he is, if he started his career on YouTube. I'll give you a couple of examples. That, for example, there are two or three people in the Pakistani YouTube space. You would think that in Pakistan, only an established journalist who's worked for a news agency would be able to get an interview with Imran Khan when he was the prime minister. But there are three guys that basically started the podcasting scene in Pakistan, and they collaborated then and they conducted an interview with Khan. So even though Tucker Carlson, there's something to be said about his background as a journalist that got him his interview with Putin. That's not to say that if he was just a social media journalist, he wouldn't have been able to do that, because we've got examples, at least in Pakistan, that people have tried that and they've been very successful in doing that.
Do you think Tucker Carlson is a good journalist?
I'd be honest, I've not seen too much of Tucker Carlson. He came up on my stream basically because of the right wing movement that's basically going on, and a lot of right wing movement people, they support Tucker Carlson. So he basically came onto my stream just because of that. And I've recently watched his interview with Putin, which I don't think he did a very good job at, because
Yeah, what did you think of that interview?
I mean, it was a monologue, and the questions that he should have been asking, I think he missed a lot of those opportunities. But at the same time, when you've got so many opinions coming from the West, you also need some sort of monologue from the East. And when I say East, we're talking about Russia. So you need at least some sort of time given to Russia as well, and to basically give their position out, especially when you've basically banned all of the Russian media outlets in the West. So you're not consuming their narratives. You only know what the West wants you to know. So I think Putin needed that time, and I think he did a good job in explaining the history behind it. And when he says that the NATO shouldn't have expanded eastward, he's 100% right in that, because why would you want to do that? We've got a not a living example, but we've got an example in history. What happened in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis? The Russia came close to the border states of the America, and look how they react. So you were basically doing the same thing with Russia and expecting a different sort of approach towards it. That's not how it happens, especially when the country that you're dealing with is yeah, I would argue that one of the strongest militaries in the world.
Yeah. And there's a case to be made to say that NATO shouldn't even exist, because NATO was created essentially to protect from the USSR.
Yeah.
So when the USSR broke, why is NATO still here, right? I
Yeah.
think they missed an opportunity to be friends with Russia once the Berlin Wall
No,
fell.
not an opportunity. They've missed multiple opportunities. I mean, even in this interview, Putin had numerous instances where he basically said that we need to collaborate on this. One example was the anti-ballistic missiles, that we need to cooperate with this. We need to have a collective security. Basically, what he was saying, that we need to have a collective security for the West, including Russia. So not that that would have made absolute sense, because what he was saying, in other words, that we need to expand NATO towards Russia as well, or get Russia into the security umbrella of NATO. But yes, they've missed multiple opportunities. In fact, they've only done the opposite and tried to instigate Russia to do what it's done right now.
Yeah, they pushed Russia
and,
away.
and also, this is not a justification for what Russia is doing right now. I think it's horrible, it's inhumane what they're doing right now. But is Russia the only one to blame in this? I don't know.
No, I think definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not. And even when he's talking about the history goes, but you can go back as far as you want. But
Yeah.
even looking back, recent history,
Yeah.
like you said, there was a lot of stuff that went wrong. But
Yeah.
even NATO expansion, it there's this aspect of wanting to keep people pushed away. While the only reason we've seen so much global peace is because we globalized and traded and had so much interaction. So it, I don't know. It seems like a missed move and a dumb move to not want to integrate Russia in this global economy.
Yeah. I mean, if you had integrated Russia, you would have had a very peaceful Western
Yeah,
hemisphere, and China wouldn't have been a threat for you as much as you think it is right now. So
yeah. Because now they ended up, and probably Putin doesn't want this, but he was forced to be pushed into China's hands. Like
yeah,
now they're forced to be friends.
yeah,
And that's bad for the West, right?
yeah,
That's bad for us. So, but the interview was good, and I think you're right that Tucker Carlson. He The good thing about it was he gave
yeah,
space
yeah,
to give Putin the opportunity to speak.
yeah.
But you did mention that you said that you wished he had asked certain questions that he
Yeah.
didn't. What kind of things are you looking at?
I mean, more. I would say that he could have grilled him more on why he- why did he decide right now and not earlier. Why was this specific year so much important? And before this, did he actually move towards the states and ask them, like, this is something? Of course, you don't talk about what your considerations are, but I really have to rewatch the interview in order to tell you exactly where he missed a lot of opportunities. But he only asked too many questions. Maybe he could have asked some questions around what's the internal political situation in Russia looks like,
Hmm.
and how do you think you would translate that, because you're taking control over Ukraine as well, right? How do you think you would translate that political structure into Ukraine?
Hmm.
How do you do that? So what's the end goal? He never mentioned what's the end goal of
Yeah.
this one. Why was the motivation? Why Ukraine was so important?
And I felt like also whenever he did speak about the end goal, but the reason kind of was changing.
Mm,
Sometimes he was speaking about, okay, well, this is our land anyways. Sometimes he's speaking about, we have our people that are there and they believe they're
yeah.
Russian. Sometimes he's talking about denazification.
Yeah,
We can't allow
exactly.
Nazi. So it feels like it was different.
Exactly. When you start arguing that you've got people who are very similar to you that live that there, then maybe he should have asked that there are people in other parts of Eastern Europe as well that are very similar to Russian traditions or the Soviet traditions that they had back then. So why not invade those countries? Why Ukraine specifically? So, and when you invade Ukraine, how do you ensure that, because you'll be extending your border towards the territories that you've occupied, then if the West decides to expand NATO, not in Ukraine but closer to that territory that you've recently basically taken control of, how would you navigate the relationships afterwards? Because it's just going to keep happening. So yeah, and especially when you've got countries like Sweden, they're considering to.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just going to get complicated right now. I think he should have asked those questions.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think with this war, a lot of people woke up, with border disputes, that war is
Yeah.
likely, and now we're in this, and it's a reality. A lot of times we forgot. And going back to Pakistan, is that something Pakistan is worried about? And the fact that there's so much instability in Pakistan, are you thinking that, we mentioned you have in brackets a lot of enemies? Do you think India? Do you think Iran? Do you
Mm.
think some other countries could take advantage of this situation of Pakistan instability?
I don't think so. It could maybe be used as an avenue to distract the world about what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening in Europe. But apart from that, I don't think so. It recently happened with Iran basically bombing certain parts of Pakistan. Then we retaliated. But
Was this recent?
yeah, it was like 3 weeks ago, maybe start
Really?
of the year, just around that time. So I don't think it's gonna happen, especially not with India. They're two nuclear forces. There's this idea of nuclear deterrence. It's been maintained since 1998, which is when both countries became nuclear powers. India conducted a test in 1970s, but essentially they became nuclear powers and nuclear capable powers in 1990s. But I don't think it's going to happen with, especially with elections in, or maybe you could argue that with elections coming close to close to coming in India, maybe Modi could, just try to just build on top of this anti-Muslim narrative. I'd say I have to be careful when I'm saying this, but this narrative that he's already supporting and try to instigate some sort of border tensions between Pakistan and India. But I think they just remain border tensions, and there were some chances that maybe Pakistan could, or maybe Pakistan and India could do some deal in terms of, nah, this isn't the right way to say this, but yeah, maybe if Pakistan had a better political infrastructure, or maybe a more stable political situation, and there was one party that was on top, maybe they could have done something to basically offer peace and reconciliation between the two countries. And especially there's just more incentive for Modi to do it, because the next term that he's gonna be in, it's gonna be his last term. So he definitely wants to leave some legacy behind. But I don't think, given the political instability in Pakistan would be in a position to basically sort of reciprocate the efforts that India might do in the future. But talking about some military confrontation between the two countries, I don't think so.
And we talked about that Pakistan is politically unstable,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to mention that Pakistan is a production powerhouse, and people don't really know, like they do produce a lot of things. They have certainly a high GDP.
Yeah.
And even, our friend, I won't say his name, but we have a lawyer friend that kind of keeps to himself. You know who I'm talking about? But he was telling me like that Pakistan operates mostly in this gray market,
Yeah.
black market, where things aren't documented.
Mm.
And he was telling me that Pakistan's GDP is probably actually the one that we know. It's probably 30% of Pakistan's actual GDP. And that actually a lot of stuff in Pakistan is going on, but we don't really know about it. And it's a really rich country.
I mean, he's already told you about it, right? We don't really know about it. So I think I'd be doing a disservice to say that I do know some things about it, but we just have to take things on face value. And if we take things on face value, I don't think Pakistan's doing good economically. And when you say we're a production house, we definitely are a production house. We're an agriculture country. We export a lot of things, but at the same time, we're really dependent on the imports. For example,
And you're in debt.
yeah, we're in debt. I mean, the just the other day I was sitting in a restaurant and just comparing the economic disparity between the two countries. Now we're living in UK. Back in Pakistan, you won't see this thing happening. I was just sitting in a restaurant and I saw two construction workers come in and have a proper meal at a restaurant. And mind you, these are construction people, construction workers. Great respect for them. But if you compare a construction worker in the UK and you compare a construction worker in Pakistan, you would never be able to see a construction worker in Pakistan be able to sit in a restaurant and have a proper meal. So the disparity is very evident. the construction workers working here, they're very comfortable. They can afford meals outside. But construction workers in Pakistan, they're barely making it. They're hand to mouth. Maybe even not that. So what happens if they, God forbid, if they have to take their children to a hospital? Then they're just left to shed. So economically, Pakistan is just fucked these days, and we definitely need better economic policy. I'm not an economist, but yeah, we definitely do need that. You don't have to be economist to see that your country is fucked economically. So
So you rely on trade mostly.
we do rely on trade. I mean, our biggest export is textile and rice. We do export a lot of that. Then we're building a lot of and somehow incentivizing the IT sector as well by not taxing the freelancers and the money that they're bringing in from the outside. But at the same time, our economy is super dependent on this base money sent from abroad by people like me. Although I've not sent any money back to Pakistan, but maybe hopefully in the future. But they're a lot dependent on the money being sent from people who are abroad. So yeah,
And you mentioned this difference between
remittance.
the UK or the West, really, and Pakistan.
Mm,
Economically, it's a lot different,
yeah.
but also culturally is
Oh
different.
yeah, yeah.
And
Super different.
you grew up, were you all the time in Pakistan growing up? You
Yeah.
never lived abroad? Was
No.
in the UK? I remember it was the first time you
Yeah,
were
it was
abroad. So how was there a culture shock, and was the difference between the Pakistani culture and UK culture big?
100%. There's a lot of difference between the Pakistani culture and the UK culture. But I won't say there was a cultural shock because I consumed a lot of Western media. By Western media, I think Bollywood, not Bollywood. Bollywood's Indian. Hollywood, and uh, or Netflix and Amazon, and I consumed a lot of media from that. So I had a good idea of what I needed to expect. And I've got a lot of family working outside as well, so they had also given me a lot of idea of what the life outside of Pakistan looks like. So there wasn't a culture shock, but in fact, I think I was a bit, I don't want to say unamused, but I wasn't surprised to see what I was seeing in the UK. But uh, the even while I say this, there's definitely a lot of cultural differences between the two countries. And I don't know if you want me to delve into the cultural
Yeah,
differences between.
what are some of these differences that you notice?
I mean, one thing that I would definitely say is that I think the Pakistani people, they're a bit more open, or
Really?
maybe even people from the west, sorry, the east, the
In what
east you
way?
go. Uh, for example, they're very open in a sense that even if they don't have much to offer, they'll offer you whatever they have.
Mm.
And I not that I've seen numerous vlogs about Westerners coming, and when I say Westerners, it's not used as a derogatory term. It's just an expression to say that people from the West. So when I've seen Westerners coming from to Pakistan, or maybe any other country within the subcontinent or the eastern side, where people are not that wealthy, they've experienced this hospitality that you would not expect of them. And there's definitely s- that's definitely not something that I've experienced over here in the West. Not saying that they're not very welcoming, they definitely are. I've not experienced, even till now, I've not experienced an incident of racism. So not saying that's the benchmark that I should be basically seeing things from, but I wouldn't say they're very welcoming in a sense that uh, open the doors of their houses to you. And fine by me, but that's something that's different in the eastern side of east in the eastern world. So yeah.
It caught me off guard because when you said open, it feels it's open in a different way. They say the West is more open minded,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, but it seems they're open to ideas. But as you said, when it comes to people, it's true. No one will give you anything here.
yeah.
No one will offer you anything.
and
No one has this sense of sharing.
and when we say this, it's not that we need something out of them. It's maybe even just offering a smile. Offering a smile goes a long way. And I think that's one thing that I've seen distinguishes the Brits from the people from the States.
Mm.
I've met a
I
lot of
just say
people
one
from the
thing: the
States.
smiles that they offer here are fake, bro.
Oh, 100%, man. 100%. You can see through it. But yeah, so it's the hospitality. I think you can't compare it to Pakistan. Then of course the cultural differences come into play. For example, the sort of familial structure that you guys have, or the Western world has, they're not very integrated. So whereas in the Eastern world, we're very integrated, we're very dependent on each other. So one wouldn't even think about leaving their home.
Hmm.
So that's one difference. And I think that's one thing that contributes towards you being in your own mind and not paying too much heed to the world around you, maybe even sort of welcoming it, per se. And I mean you can see this in the tube, right? You enter a tube, nobody gives a shit about what's happening on the side. They just keep to themselves. Not saying that's a bad thing, but yeah, you won't find this back in Pakistan. Yeah.
You mentioned that in Pakistan, families stay together.
Yeah.
So even, for example, if you get married and you get a wife, would that marriage live with their parents still, or would they get their own house?
No, they can live with their own parents if they want to, but there's definitely an option. And I'm not saying that there's an option every time. W- There's certainly pros about the culture back home, but there's certainly cons about it as well. Not everybody gets an option. Some people are forced to do X, or some people are forced to do Y. But yeah, there's an option for you to do things, but generally it's preferred that you have the wife at your home.
And also, I imagine even in terms of like siblings and stuff like that,
Mm,
it's, there's different maybe cultural family reasons for people to stay together,
yeah,
but there's a pro that it's economically more viable if everyone's
it's
together, right? Even for
yeah,
food, for rent, or for housing.
yeah. But it's especially in this economic situation, you need people around you to just spread the burden, not spread the burden, share the burden.
Mm.
So yeah, it's economically viable, but I think that's hardly a factor for it. But it's just more emotionally st- s- it keeps you mostly in a state of mind that you want to be
It
in.
keeps you grounded.
It keeps you grounded, yes. And you get to value all of those relationships in the process. So
So the fact that you've been living in the UK and living alone, have you seen the kind of, they say you never know what you have until it's gone.
yeah,
Have you seen the benefits of being with a family now? Like, do you feel it more?
of course, you start to acknowledge all the privileges that you have. And when I say privilege, it's a privilege to be at your home with your family, having your siblings around you. One privilege that's actually a privilege is that you get up, you get your meals. You don't have to go to the kitchen, prepare your own meal, and do stuff like that.
Especially with Ramadan coming up, bro.
Especially with Ramadan coming up. Funny thing, I'm just going back to Pakistan next month.
That
So,
is it.
yeah. So I'll be there for all of Ramadan, most likely as well. But hopefully not. And when I say hopefully not, I don't know. Maybe I land a job before that. So I don't. Let's see.
See what happens.
I don't know why I said this in the podcast. Maybe we'll need to cut this out.
Maybe who knows who will listen to this? I'll give you a job, bro. Maybe
Yeah,
you're gonna.
yeah. You never know.
But so even though you didn't have a culture shock, did you have expectations, and did the reality meet those expectations?
I was a little. I would say I was a little disappointed in some ways. The life's good here, mind you. The quality of life that people have over here, you can't even compare it to the quality of life back in Pakistan. But they're not. You can't see that them as happy people in some ways. And the one thing that I would say that I can't culturally cope with that is that you spend all of your time working during the work days, and then you go out on the weekends. You get drunk shit out of your mind. You lose any sense of what you did that day. You don't have many memories. The idea behind this is work 5 days a week, get drunk on the Friday, spend Saturday wasted and with a hangover, and then Sunday just to relax and then go back to work. So, I mean, that's not something that I would ever aspire to or look up to. And of course, to each their own. But back in Pakistan, you'd be working, then you come back to the family, or maybe come back to your home, then you go out for tea, even if you're super tired or whatnot. But you experience every day as it is. So I think that's a difference. And when you're having social interactions, when you've consumed a lot of alcohol, I don't think they're very sort of nurturing or stimulating. They're neither stimulating conversations that you have, or neither some emotional bond that you're most likely going to be able to make when you're drunk out of your mind. Maybe I don't know. I've never consumed a sip of alcohol, so maybe you.
But yeah, but the thing is, the culture here, people drink.
Yeah.
So, but that's something that you've noticed. You've probably spoken to people while they're drunk,
Yeah.
and that's something that you didn't attract.
Yeah, that's something that I'm not attracted to, but at the same time, some people love it, so you never know, maybe there's a charm to it that I'm missing.
To each their own, as
To
you
each
said.
their own.
But I tend to agree with you that this working and drinking cycle is a cycle.
Yeah.
And I'll ask you this: how? So you've worked while being in the UK.
Mm,
How do you think of the working situation? So we have this high living standard.
mm.
But what do you think of all this work that's required in this life of work that's needed to have this standard of life? And would you say it's worth it?
I would say it's worth it, man, honestly, because that just gives you a sense of what you can accomplish. And of course, whether you do it for yourself or you do it for the other people, whether you're working in a company or you're an entrepreneur, you're gonna have to do a lot of work to be somebody, right? So it's definitely worth it. Is it worth it to do for other people? Maybe not as much as it would have been worth it if you did it for yourself, but it's definitely worth it. As long as you're getting money out of it, that's the charm, right? What's the charm in you not being able to take a good looking girl out on a date if you don't have the money for it? Maybe even have send your kids to proper school. You're not going to be able to do that if you don't put in the work. And yeah, I think it's definitely worth it. You get a lot of respect out of it. And there's an argument to be made that uh, maybe respect is something that holds relationships together rather than love. So you never know.
I think definitely on the side of the woman's side is definitely it. Like, if the woman will stay with you, I think if she respects you more than if she,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
sense that if she loves you,
I
and
mean,
this,
you would naturally assume that a child would love their parents, right? But if the parent doesn't fulfill the responsibilities, do you really think that the child is still going to love them?
mm,
So if it doesn't, the parent doesn't fulfill the responsibilities, it means that the child is naturally going to lack some respect for them, because even in his unnurtured and developing mind, he knows that this is something that needs to be provided for me. And when you don't do that, you lose a bit of respect for the other person, and then lastly, the love starts to dwindle. So
and I think because you said yes, it is worth it to
mm,
work. I'll add one more thing because you said it's worth it because we get money.
yeah,
One more thing, I think why it's worth it is because we also get knowledge. We learn in these
100%,
jobs,
100%.
and that's something that's underrated. But
You're talking about the part-time work, right? Or maybe
part time work, full time,
yeah, full-time. Yeah,
any
I was
work where
talking
you're
about
learning.
full-time. Yeah, yeah, definitely,
You know,
definitely.
like you can work part time and still learn and earn money, or
Yeah,
full time, whatever. But yes, you're earning and you're learning, and that's what counts.
100%, 100%. Life is a journey, man. You need to learn along the way, but yeah, it's definitely it's definitely, I mean, life's going to teach you one way or the other. It's just important for you to make sure that the way that you learn is probably an easier way than the other way. The realization when it hits you, maybe it's too late, maybe you can't do too much about it. So the learning needs to be as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Maybe
Because
that's something we all need to share. And yeah, never mind.
yeah, I think no matter what, we have to learn. 'Cause the thing is, there's this thing is like, oh, I tried my best.
Yeah,
You have this goal and you tried your best, and sometimes your best isn't enough and you don't get there.
yeah,
Well, at the end of the day, there's a certain amount of whatever skill or effort that's needed
yeah.
to achieve that certain goal. So there's no, you know, there's nothing given to you in life. And sometimes you'll get hit in the face with reality,
Yeah, yeah.
and you'll have to learn the lesson anyways, because where you want to go, there's a certain amount of things that need to be done. You can't just skip over anything.
100%, 100%. And that just gives you a lot more respect for yourself as well. If you know that you made it on your own terms and by your own will, then you just develop this realization of who you are as a person. And I think it's way more important than the money that you get out of it. So you need to be sure that you can do whatever. But I don't know. I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker, but
No,
it's
but I mean, it's true. We all have to deal with this, and it's when we want to know, how do I get respected by
yeah,
other people or by women, by our colleagues, whatever. I think the question is, do you first respect yourself? What are you doing to respect yourself?
100%, 100%. The first person that needs to respect you is you. So if you can't do that, why do you expect other people to do it for you? And people say that you can't respect somebody just on the first occasion that you meet them. There's a pattern that you need to acknowledge, that you sort of, I don't want to say respect, but basically that you admire, a pattern of behavior that you admire. And if you see that reflecting on somebody, then you start to respect them. You don't just respect random people on the street.
Yeah,
So of course you're not disrespectful to them, but that's not respect.
yeah.
So that's just normal decency.
Mm.
So
And as you said, we're all on a journey, and you had this journey of studying in the UK
yeah,
at a top institution. What what was that like for you? It was a short year.
it was a short year. Yeah, definitely could do with some more, but yeah. I mean, it was an experience. If I keep the financial side out of it, of course, it was definitely an experience. Initially, when I came here, I was living with my aunt. I lived with her for 2 months. Then I moved to Wood Green, which is where we met. I don't hope I hope you don't mind me sharing this information, but yes, that's where we met, and I think it just went uphill from there. The people that I met in Wood Green, I think, just gave me so much more clarity on who I was as a person, and gave me a lot of respect for other people's culture as well. And loved my time over there. Then met a lot of cool people in SOAS as well. Uh, it's definitely something that I wouldn't trade off, but it can only become better from here if 5 years down the line we're all very well established and we get to share those memories back again.
Too
So
good. And 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, what are we all don't know really what we're gonna do, or we're looking for different jobs and stuff.
yeah,
But what would you like your life to be 10 years down the line?
I mean, 10 years down the line, that's a difficult question, man. But 10 years down the line, I'll be 36. So by 36, hopefully, I would like to believe that I want to be a consultant, either a consultant or a journalist, but a consultant for a political risk agency. And yeah, maybe even a partner. So I've got shares in the company. I'm making good stuff. So I've got a family. Of course, you want that, but do I see myself living in the West? I don't know. Maybe I live a bit more to the east. Maybe Dubai. Maybe Qatar. But yeah, I see myself comfortably living, established in my own profession, and yeah,
It's
I,
interesting you say you wouldn't live in the West. So many people I speak to, when they think about their future, when where they're gonna be established. Yes, right now we follow the opportunity, but ideally people are saying, yeah, I either want to be living where I'm from, or be living kind of Middle East is the new trend? And
Yeah, Middle East is definitely the new trend, but if the situation in Pakistan it gets better, then definitely that's my first option. I don't want to live anywhere apart. But then again, I want to be making good money. Is good money being offered back in Pakistan? So money is a lot of motivation. So as long as I'm getting good money, I'll be there.
Yeah, we follow the opportunity.
Yeah.
Is there any advice you would give to your younger self that's coming just before coming to the UK, going into this master's?
Yeah,
Anything
man.
you would say?
Definitely be more disciplined. That's something that I've lacked for quite some time. I even do these days. I reached here like 40 minutes late. So that's, even though I blame the bus ride for it. Holy shit, man, that was a 1.5 hour bus ride. But be more disciplined. That's one thing that I would say to myself. And the second thing is expose yourself to what you fear. So d- don't be shy to take on opportunities that you think you're going to fail at, because that's a learning curve as well. So more disciplined, more fearless in terms of the things that you try out. And yeah, keep reading. I think uh disciplined reading and just explore the intellectual side of the world and of yourself. So that's three things that I want to do. If I do the first and the third, what was the second one?
The second one, so you said you want to be more disciplined.
Yeah.
You don't want to
Yeah,
miss opportunities that
fearless.
you
Yeah.
fear, and you want to read more.
Yeah, if I think I do the first and the third, the second one comes with it.
Yeah.
You know, competence is confidence. That's something that I've heard from a podcast, and it resonated with me. So as long as you're competent, you're not going to shy away from responsibilities. So two things that maybe I go back and I reflect on that. Maybe I change myself after this podcast. You never know, man.
But yeah, even though we finished the masters, the education never stops.
Yeah, the education never stops. It didn't begin at our masters. It will never end at our masters. May, let's see. Let's see. There's so much to explore about ourselves, man. We're 25, 25, looking to explore ourselves and the world. I don't know. Let's see.
Bro, thank you so much, bro, for coming on.
No
And
worries, man. Thank you for inviting
who
me.
knows, bro?
It was a pleasure.
10 years down the line, we might do it again, bro.
We're definitely gonna do this again, but that's gonna be on my podcast.
Yeah.
I hope I was a good guest, man. I don't know.
Bro, too good, bro.
Are you
good.
sure?
Too good.
Thank you for listening to the Inspire Alex podcast. See you next episode.